Hello, everyone. Let's get started. Happy New Year to anyone I haven't already spoken to. Thank you for joining today. I know there's another competing meeting today, so I'm not surprised that we haven't got as many joiners as we normally would today. Um, so uh, Today is a double session, as I announced on the Product Council channel. It's largely because we have, first off, a bit of congestion in the product council calendar for this PI. And secondly, there are two work streams that need an increased degree of engagement with the community. And essentially, we need to make sure that the community is aware of the work that they're doing at the moment. So those two work streams are deployment tools, which is all about the provision of tools, documentation and support to enable adopters to deploy the Mojaloop software in a variety of environments. And the second one is the core and releases led by Sam Kummary, which is all about maintaining the Mojaloop core and the immediate focus being a roadmap to the release of Mojaloop Irrawaddy version 17.0, which is going to be a big release on the Mojaloop roadmap. So I'm going to ask, first of all, James to talk about the deployment tools, and then we'll go into a Q&A session on that, and then we'll hand over to Sam for core and releases. So first of all, James, over to you.
Thanks, Paul. Yes, well, like Paul said, the deployment tools workstream was created fairly recently. Paul and I and Sam discussed the need for this towards the end of the last PI, because we realized that as the on-premise deployment capability started to come online, and more adopters and people in the community have made successful deployments on premise. The effort and focus for on-premise was naturally starting to lessen. However, we did realize that there is some further thinking and more strategic thinking that we think should happen around the overall deployment strategy from a product perspective for Mojaloop. What should it look like for adopters and people in the ecosystem who want to come along and deploy a Mojaloop? That previously, various different personas, different scenarios have been captured, and various tools have been put in place to enable people to deploy Mojaloops in those various scenarios. So for development and testing, pre-production and production, using various different tools. But that part of the ecosystem has become a bit fragmented. So we thought it was worth putting some time and effort in this PI to have a rethink, look at the landscape, the existing tool set, and ask ourselves some deep fundamental questions about how Mojaloop should be deployable, what kind of experience do we want our various types of users to have, what do we have at the moment, and what gaps do we think there are. The eventual outcome we're hoping of this work stream will be some actionable work items, a backlog with some stories, some user stories, tasks, epics even, to go and either refactor existing tooling or improve documentation, improve the way we communicate the various options, and possibly do some actual engineering effort as well if there's any missing pieces that we think would enhance the adoptability and usability of Mojaloop from a deployment perspective. So what I'm really hoping will come out of this session today is some initial thoughts, maybe some discussion about what's their people's experiences any obvious gaps that people think there are. But in more general terms, just a call for participation from people in the community who have an interest in this area, either commercially or just purely from an academic perspective. If you're interested in this area, you have some opinions you want to bring to bear, we'd love to hear from you. So before I open the session for questions, Paul, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I think I do. We are, what is it? Middle of December last year, we updated the objectives for this work stream to talk about what we should do in terms of developing what we came to call a DFSP tools portfolio. Do you think it's worth just going through those objectives?
Yeah, it could be.
Do you want me to put it up on the screen?
Yes, if you have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd emphasize that I put it there and it's me that's the author, but I'm not actually the author. It's just that I pasted it there. So let me share my screen. Actually, it's better to do that. Share that. So that's what we agreed on as the objectives. And you can see there are essentially two groups. We call this overall a DFSP tools portfolio. And there's been, I think, historically, an ideological view that we should only provide a set of tools and then DFSPs should take the tools and do with them as they wish. And I understand that. And for that reason, we should continue to supply the tools. And those tools, a non-definitive list is included here. So any DFSP or an external SI can download those tools. They can customize them and they can build a solution for a DFSP to connect into a Mojaloop deployment. But we've also, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Paul. Yeah, I was going to say, so that's focused on the DFSPs themselves.
Yeah.
But the deployment tools, how do the deployment tools tie in with the participation tools? Do you maybe want to say a few words?
I think that's for you to say, James. It's not for me to say, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, like Paul said, participation tools are targeted at DFSPs, people who are going to participate in Mojaloop schemes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who we want to participate in Mojaloop schemes, but
yeah,
the deployment tools workstream is more focused on the deployment of.
Agreed. And I only highlighted this because I do think its impact on the deployment tools as well. So
there are some discussions ongoing about the crossover between those two, and there definitely is crossover.
Yeah.
Some of you will be aware of the MCM product that exists in the open source world, Mojaloop Connection Manager, which provides a set of APIs and user interface that's hosted at the center that exposes functionality that the participation tools hook into to speed up, simplify, reduce the risk of errors, human error, and enforce best practice for the technical setup of the connection between a DFSP and the scheme.
Yeah.
So there definitely is that crossover. In the participation workstream, participation tools workstream, just before Christmas, we started to tackle that issue. Is MCM the right thing? If it is, it's not currently in the Mojaloop GitHub org. So we started to have a look to evaluate how difficult it would be to bring that code under the stewardship of the Mojaloop Foundation, and have our core maintenance team maintain and update that as necessary. So that's something to think about as well.
Agreed. Julie has raised her hand. Julie, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I have a question, like actually on what you presented on ZenHub. What is the assumption of the level of understanding of Mojaloop when deployment start? Because I think like it's yeah, it's an important variable in my head. Do we assume that the DFSP who are on board already know about Mojaloop at all? Do we assume like what do we assume in terms of level of knowledge of Mojaloop overall? Because it wasn't one of the parameters described.
Julie, do you mean what assumptions are we making about the people who are going to be deploying Mojaloop?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
In terms of what they know about the process, the Mojaloop tool, do we assume they've been through a POC already, and so they have some notion of how they want to set up the infrastructure? What kind of level of decision have they made? And is providing some element to help them to make an informed decision part of the work stream, or is it part and managed somewhere else? Like you see, where you see a bit like what's the framework?
Yes. Well, that's a very good question, Julie. Now, in the past, to date, the desire has been to allow people to start from zero and completely self-serve all the way through to a live production Mojaloop scheme. So we have tried to provide documentation and training and code to enable people to do that with zero hand-holding. We have maybe 2 or 3 data points from people in the community who successfully done that. However, I think we can always improve what we've got, and there are definitely some gaps that we should start to address. Higala is probably the biggest community member who have been through that journey most recently. So it's possibly worth us reaching out to them to try to get them to participate in this work stream, maybe.
Yeah, and I think for me, another great candidate would be Xlayer, because they're going through this process at the moment, and to be fair, they are finding the path quite muddy.
Yes.
So getting their feedback and understanding what we could improve could definitely help us. But yeah, I think like could we mark this as an assumption in the ticket so that the framework is a bit clearer?
Yeah, that's possibly the first thing we should do in the work stream. Yeah, I don't think we've announced the timing of these work stream calls yet.
No.
So my ask to everybody on the call is, if you or any of your colleagues want to participate in this work stream, there is, I think there is a Slack channel for this, however.
There is a Slack channel. I just put it on the chat.
Thank you. Yes, ws-deployment-tools. Yeah,
it's a fairly blank and empty Slack channel at the moment. That's simply because this work stream hasn't really kicked off until this call.
Yeah. So we'll make some posts on that Slack channel in the coming days to ask for basically time zone information from people who want to participate. If you just drop a message on that channel if you're interested, and let me know what time zone you're in, we'll try to pick the least worst option for everybody. The plan, I should say, is for a regular once a week call to start with.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any input before we hand back over to Paul?
James, well, this is Sam.
Hi, Sam.
So regarding the topic about having differentiating between participation tools and deployment tools, I think that needs a bit more discussion because we have a set of tools on the deployment side, and with the ITK now, we have tools that support adoption and provide multiple options for different entities. So on the deployment side, we have for different options for the switch, as well as tools that can be used for various services. So maybe we can categorize them as two different things. So that was based on the list you were showing earlier as well, Paul. If we can have two categories for this. One is on the tools itself that support adoption, like the ITK, payment manager, those kind of things.
Yeah.
Other one is more like IAC and core test harness and Docker Compose tools or purely infrastructure tools that support adoption, irrespective of which side we are using that, on the edges or at the center.
Yeah, it's a good point, Sam. There are, I think there are quite a large number of things in the open source Mojaloop space right now, documentation and code, tools, utilities that support lots of different pieces of this puzzle. But I think maybe the first thing we should do in this work stream is try to get our heads around exactly what that landscape is right now. Figure out which work stream owns which piece of the puzzle. It's likely that some of that will be participation tools. But to me, at least, one thing we're missing is a really clear map, vision for what it should look like from a from a high level, what the product should look like to people who come along and want to make use of Mojaloop. What features do we want, and where should those features be? What experience do we want the various stakeholders to have when they start their journey and at the various steps in their journey towards building a Mojaloop-based scheme? I don't think we have that map clearly drawn. If we do, then
No, but I think that Sam's suggestion is a good starting point, a good contribution to that. So thank you, Sam, for that. It's a useful approach. Yeah. Justice, I see you've raised your hand.
Hello. Happy New Year, everyone.
Good to see you again, Justice.
Nice to be here. Quick question. So, I mean, what we are also working on is to kind of inform our future decisions around feedback that we get from potential customers and so on. So I was wondering if you had a register of some kind about specific pain points around Mojaloop that you would want to address through this exercise as well.
Yeah. Well, we don't have such a thing. I don't think we get a lot of verbal feedback from adopters through various back channels, our go-to-market team. Plus, folks often reach out to us on Slack, through some of the help channels or directly to individuals at the foundation. But I don't think we actually I don't think we necessarily capture that in one place, that sort of feedback, do we, Paul?
No, we don't. But we probably should.
Yeah.
You raise a good point, and we should be doing a better job of that. So yeah, thank you. We just need to think of a sensible mechanism where it can be preserved. Steve?
I mean, I think, Justice, it's funny you mentioned that. I think that we were on a different discussion thread earlier. Paul, Julie, Michael, and I think we kind of fell to that exact point just earlier today. I did, sorry I'm late, I missed the first part of the conversation, but I did want to just let everyone know that the go-to-market team is working on kind of what you were describing earlier, if I heard it correctly, of a very simplified process document, but then that would describe the process of adoption, and all the different tasks that need to get done at different phases of adoption. And so right now we're working on the framework of it, and then we'll be bringing it to all of you for filling in some of the details of different boxes within that framework. So James, I know I arrived late. Is that what you're talking about? Something like that, a framework for describing how to adopt Mojaloop?
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it.
Okay. We worked on we've been working on it in the background for a while. I think we had a work stream about this. I feel like every year we come up with the idea of doing a work stream on it. It never really takes off. So our team has started putting that together. We'll share it hopefully by the end of January, probably ideally before that in the next 2 weeks. But Tulu is leading that process for us.
Okay, fantastic. In which case, I'll make sure that Tule gets the invite to the kickoff call, the work stream.
Okay.
Thanks, Steve.
And then on the other one is I say kind of beyond what Justice was saying of people's feedback. I've also just it's not just customers' feedback, I would say, but also what is our current kind of positioning on certain use cases, I guess, is something I feel like I've been missing of, or on work streams. Is there something where a work stream says, this is the problem we're trying to solve, and this is what we are this is the vision we have for what the end of this looks like, where people can contribute and say, actually, this does solve my problem, or actually, this does not solve my problem. I feel like if we had that, it might be a good place to capture people's feedback on what is the problem we're trying to solve.
Yep.
So I guess my question is, do we have something like that for work streams that I'm just not aware of?
Well, the work stream objectives, we do maintain a list of all the work stream objectives on Community Central. And Paul has been pretty in asking people to update that. I'll just ping a link in the Zoom chat here for you, Steve. That active work streams link. There are a couple of...
I have been updating them over the last month. There are a few work streams there that have not been completed, have not published their objectives yet. I have to be honest and say that they all belong to one person who is just too busy to do it at the moment, even though he's definitely promised and his heart's in the right place. It's just time. But they are coming.
I wonder who that could be.
I'm not naming names.
No, I think I own one still as well, actually, Paul. Don't I? Yeah.
I thought, yeah, okay, fine.
I
You as well.
Yeah. So we do try and keep those up to date, Steve. But they evolve. So at the start of the PI, we might have a clear vision for what we want to achieve. And then as we start diving in, we realize that we've been prioritizing the wrong things, or situations change and we have to adjust. So they're usually accurate, at least for the first half of the PI, I would say.
Warren's comment in the chat, I think, is very important. And Warren, I think that is a statement that says that we really need your input, or the Infotech's input, in both deployment tools and participation tools work streams, so that we're getting feedback from your experience in the DRPP program.
Yeah. Participation tools work stream. There is, again, if you're interested in that, I'll ping the Slack channel name. There we go, in the Zoom link. Always looking for more contributions there. There's a regular call 14:30 UTC every Thursday for that. So give me a ping if you want to be included on the invite. There's lots of things going on in that work stream.
Yeah, it's a very, very active work stream. Yeah. Okay, are there any other comments on the deployment tools work stream?
Warren just made another comment in the.
Oh yes, yeah.
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 As always, Warren, we understand that. Yes.
Yeah. Commercial sensitivity is always respected. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, we can talk. We quite often find ourselves talking in general terms on work streams, rather than any specifics of any particular adopter or implementer.
Okay, thank you. Unless there's any other comments, I suggest we move on.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay, thanks, James. That's great. So we move to our other work stream for today, which is the Core and Releases work stream. And I'll just hand over straight to you, Sam.
Thanks, Paul. Just give me one moment as I share my screen. If you can see my Google Chrome, Paul.
Yes, we could see it. Yeah.
Thank you. So thanks for this, and thanks for the session, James, and for this opportunity, Paul. It's good to share the status of where we are with Mojaloop releases and what's happening on the Mojaloop core side of things. We started this PI 26 with the primary goal to make a release. And one of the constant things with the core and releases side of things is to make sure our Mojaloop releases are well maintained. They're tested because things are changing. Various platforms and underlying dependencies that we are using are always changing. So the primary goal of this is to make sure that Mojaloop works with all the changes that are happening elsewhere. And then, of course, it's the feature side of things, working with the various work streams. More recently, some huge features like consequential features such as FX and ISO, working with those work streams to ensure the features that are delivered by those teams are assimilated, absorbed well into Mojaloop, and then after going through our release cycle, are published to the community and released. So to that effect, we have Mojaloop V17, which we wanted to do that rolls out the FX feature primarily, but also while working with the work streams, it became apparent that the FX and ISO are closely tied together for various reasons, and requests from the adopters as well and the work streams that are working on this. So we wanted to roll out both the ISO and FX together with V17. To give you a status of where we are now, the reviews of the FX feature were quite extensive. We had discussions regarding the designs initially at the Design Authority, and those were published to the community. Then the implementation was done as part of the work streams, thanks to the teams and team members who were working on that. That is delivered. The FX features went through thorough reviews. We had back and forth on the PR reviews. These are some huge PRs. I have the list of the pull requests as well if anyone is interested. And we were able to get past that stage where the pull request reviews are done and those are merged into main branches. But even before this, we know that Infotix team, as part of their ongoing project work for DRPP, Comesa has already deployed and tested these on their own deployments and for their own milestones. But on the Mojaloop side, we've gone through these pull requests independently, and these are now merged into main branches. So what it means is that the individual releases on these services have the FX feature done. But the ISO 20022 feature that the team wanted also is in progress, and that is not merged into main branches yet, and that hasn't been reviewed yet. So the designs for that are approved at the DA, but the implementation is still pending in the sense that it is there on feature branches, but it's not there on the main branch. So that is one thing I marked that as in progress here. That is also why the QA testing is in progress. So once we have these pull requests merged for ISO, we'll have a release candidate. So that's where we are. On the QA and testing side, we already gotten into a place where we know how to deploy this. So we tested it out on our dev QA environments on how to get these releases and how to deploy those snapshot releases on our dev and QA environments. So we have dev QA environments on AWS that we run, and we use these for the latest releases and releases that are in progress, that are rapidly evolving. These are not stable releases. So we have one QA environment that runs for latest stable release v16. But in our other environments that we use for dev and testing, we have the snapshot releases that eventually want to become a release candidate so that we can go through the release checklist and the cycle. So that's where we are. We are hoping there is a meeting planned that Paul Baker is going to lead, where we'll talk about what's there and what's yet to be done, representing the FX and the ISO work streams. So once that is done, we'll know where we are, and I think we'll be able to get to a date on the release and release candidate once we know the gaps and what else is pending on that. Apart from that, we're also working on some enhancements related to Finance Portal. There were some gaps that we identified, and some were also reported by the community members. These are related to not just the features, but also the deployment aspects. So how do we deploy Finance Portal on top of a bare bones Mojaloop Helm deployment that is not using infrastructure as code? So infrastructure as code has a well-defined and something that works, a way that works of deploying Finance Portal, and that comes available out of the box. So we have that in our sandboxes as well, where we use infrastructure as code IAC to deploy Mojaloop environments. But where IAC is not used, the process is not that well defined, as in the deployers are supposed to figure out some integration aspects on their own. So we're testing those out as well to streamline that mode of deployment as well. And coming to hardening Mojaloop releases and some issues that we identified recently. So one of the deliverable that we had in PI25 from the platform quality and security workstream was developing a mechanism to identify deprecations, like the packages that are outdated, not Mojaloop packages, but the underlying third-party libraries and components that we use. That's the nature of the Node.js environment that we use. But we have a software bill of materials that are generated in our CI cycle, and even to the lowest level of dependencies. So we have nested dependencies up to 13 levels. So 1 to 13, where each one library or dependency calls another one, and so on, up to 13 to 20 levels. So this exercise we did goes to each of those and then finds out if there are any deprecated dependencies at any level. So the work we are doing now is to address some of those, where, because we know there are some outdated packages, we have team members who are working on replacing those. I appreciate the community contributions on that one. Thanks to some volunteers who are working on that. But we also have core team members working on removing those, replacing those with equivalent libraries that are well maintained, or upgrading the versions in some cases, or getting rid of those, even if those are not needed. So that's what's ongoing. The release work is still the priority. Once we have a status check on where we are and the gaps to be addressed, we'll have a clearer path to the release candidate and then release after that. Just this last line about Tiger Beetle integration, next-gen settlement. We have not started on that yet, but it's still part of those are part of the work streams for this PI, and we're keeping an eye on that so that once V17 is done, in the future PIs, as these features are delivered, we're able to integrate and assimilate those features as well.
Before you go on, Sam, I'd just
Please.
like to make a couple of comments. First of all, it's clear from this that V17 is going to be our most significant release for quite some time. It has some huge updates here and additional functionality in terms of inter-scheme functionality, FX, ISO 222, and the proxy support as well. and as well as all the general performance and bug fixes, it's a really important release for us. So Sam and the team are taking extra care to make sure that it's a good quality, robust release. The other points on the slide, well, from 4, 5, 6, I think this emphasizes, and indeed 3, this emphasizes the important role that this workstream has in supporting other workstreams. So there's the performance testing, there's the performance workstream, for example, which is hugely dependent on core and releases, and then the Tiger Beetle work and next-gen settlements. They are separate work streams, but which have to collaborate closely with the core and releases work stream. So, yeah, I think this is both a really important release and also emphasizes the fact that this is not a standalone work stream. It's tightly integrated with others, and all the other work streams need to coordinate with core and releases to make sure that everything works together in a seamless manner as possible. So thank you for emphasizing that, Sam. Before we go on, Sam, Warren has asked a question in the chat.
It's a good question, I thought.
Yes.
I'm assuming it doesn't include me or some of us here, Warren.
No, I certainly hope that you have some.
It'll be interesting to know, Sam, what mechanisms you've tried as well, but definitely interested in the wider community's experience.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I had a chance to deploy using the various methods we have, the Docker Compose, the Helm deploy, and IAC as well, more recently. But the Helm deploy is the one we are using in the initial stages of dev, QA, and testing. But once that is functionally validated and ready, we use the ISC as well. So those are the main things we are doing. And Docker Compose is more for dev, QA, test, demo purposes. I wouldn't say that's close to what we are expecting with adopters, but that also is very useful. And when we brought up the topic earlier about deployment tools and adoption tools, I think those are things I want us to brainstorm and look into so that we have a well-defined set of tooling and criteria for different levels.
Yeah. So I think we need to make it, we need the go-to-market team support. I'm sure they want to give us the support, but we need to have a way where we are emphasizing and marketing to all the potential adopters the value of sharing your statistics and vital characteristics. I know Steve and I were just lamenting a lack of data around some areas. It's part of that kind of open source community concept, right? The only reason this works as an open source program is if we pool resources and experiences, and it's not just about code, it's about what works and doesn't work, what the procedures are, what processes fail or don't fail. You don't even need the details, but to know that these are the set of processes you follow. Like I said, my observation about the specific implementation, it's not actually about commercial sensitivities as much as it's about security sensitivities. So, but security via obfuscation is no security at all. So it's a weak excuse. But all of us in the community need to be building to a sustainable ecosystem, and that sustainability from open source comes from sharing problems and potentially sharing the solutions. So we need people to appreciate that. So any experiences that people can share would be very valuable. For our part, we use we have shared some really useful tools and techniques for developers to use in running deployments. And I forget now, Sam will remember better than I must probably. But there's a containerized solution that allows you to test and develop if you're developing against core components, which is a small part of the community, but important part. So there's that tooling in place. And then for anything that we do, because nothing below the IAC that's available now, and now more broadly should maybe be packaged as the control center, of which the technology is the infrastructure as code. But nothing that we have as standard is fit for doing anything with other than development, because it's got no security. So so the IAC is all that we use, and we singly focus on value in that, on improving the situation in that space, and would therefore value anybody else's experience or improvements or contributions to it. Because the one thing as a piece of critical infrastructure we can't afford is a security challenge.
Yeah, you make a very good point, Warren. Thank you.
Thanks, Warren. Yeah, agree on the importance of security there.
Yeah. Sam, do you want to carry on? Is there anything else?
Yeah, don't have too much else. Going into a bit of detail, if anyone here is interested, we went back and forth on these, like anywhere between 10 and 20 times on some of these pull requests, because they were huge, and the nature of the work involved there. But I listed those out here for our main repositories. There are other supporting repositories as well, but these are the main areas of central ledger, coding, and MLAP adapter and account lookup that cover most of the updates. Others in the libraries are supporting the work that's needed here, so I did not include them. But if anyone is interested, we can share these as well to look at what's coming. The other thing is, apart from effects, some of these also included some of the changes that were done as well. For example, there was a batching feature introduced on failure scenarios, like on timeout handler and abort as well. In V16, batching was done for the happy path, meaning transfers that were committed, but not for failure scenario. So with this update in V17 release candidate, that is being rolled out as well. That is included in here. Apart from that, we also have some ISO related changes. There was a change regarding the UUID that was unanimously adopted. I mean, in the CCB as well, there was a proposal made to change how we generate the UUIDs or the correlation IDs. We used to use a UUID V1 there. Now we moved away from that. So some of other miscellaneous changes are included as well. So these will be rolled out. The details will be there in the release notes. But for anyone looking at the PRs, I wanted to give a heads up on some of the changes that might be included. Most of these PRs have a description where these are listed. But if you have any questions, you can reach out to me or the authors of those. So yeah, these are the updates. Finance portal updates in packages and libraries, which are more quality improvements. We are working on some quality issues as well, but I don't want to cover it in both places. So we are covering that in the platform quality and security side. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Sam. And yet again, you emphasize how important this work stream is to in coordination with other work streams. So thank you. Are there any other questions for Sam? No? In that case, I will thank you all for joining. It's been a very useful session. Thank you. And I would encourage anyone who wants to contribute to deployment tools to go to the Slack channel that James shared on the chat. And I know Sam is always looking for people to support him in the Core and Releases workstream as well. So thank you all. Again, Happy New Year. And I look forward to working with all of you through the remainder of this PI. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Happy New Year again.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Happy New Year.
Bye now.
So
Happy New Year. Thank you.
Bye-bye.